we do get so caught up, whether you're a loan officer, a branch manager, a regional, you're running a company, you've got a software platform, whatever it is, you end up living and breathing this stuff. You need friends that, to your point, don't really know what you do for a living and kind of don't care.
All right, we're ready to roll. Let's go.
Well, Michael Sema, get a rate. Thanks for joining me, man. We've talked about getting you on this for a minute. You and I got introduced by David Licken, which is it's just proof of the things that I like about what I get to do on a daily basis. And that is, David is somebody that I probably should have known for a long time. Of course, I know who David is, whether he's appearing on CNBC or his consulting work or his podcast that he does. His podcast is great because it's more like a radio show, and I like the way he structures it. But I know you were working with him. You totally believe in the value of mentorship and leadership that can lead you in a direction that maybe you're not currently going in or whatever. And we got connected by David. I'm really glad that we did. It's been fun working with you, but it's also been fun kind of getting to know you and not only get a rate. And I want to get into that a little bit because you guys are unique, but I think you're pretty unique in just the way that your mind works relative to the industry. Where I was looking back at some old notes, and I know that I think you started off as a loan officer. You go to college, you jump into the industry, I think right away.
Right.
When you were in college, who did you think you would be? Did you think you'd be a mortgage banker?
No, I mean, I was like most kids in college. I was lost. I used to play pro soccer right after high school. I got recruited to go to Europe. So I was there for about a year and a half, injured my knee, came back, went to school, and I wasn't really too serious about it. Even though I did great in school, I was kind of lost. I didn't know what I was going to do. I always thought that somehow, some way, just leave it up to Jesus and he'll figure it out. Like he'll show you the door that you need to go through when it's time to go through it. So I was just lost. I was enjoying myself, of course, like every other college kid, partying, doing the regular college stuff. But I was always working, and that's one of the things that I always kept an eye on is where can I make more money? Like what can I do to put food on the table? Unfortunately, I come from a single mother that struggled. She had to work 3 jobs, and putting us through college wasn't easy. So I've been working since the age of 12. And when I realized about the opportunity, especially the amount of money that was being made in the mortgage industry, it was right out of college. And my brother-in-law showed me his brand new car, his brand new house that he's buying, his brand new Rolex, and that's all you need to show a 22-year-old.
That's right. So, how do I get that?
Yeah, exactly. And no, it was great. It really allowed me to put food on the table and help out my mom, help us out to really get out of the situation that we're in, and really just live a different type of life. It was a blessing, man. It really was.
And going back into that a little bit also, and you were telling me this a little bit not that long ago. Your mom's not from the States, right?
She was born in Europe.
Okay, and so not only single mom, sounds like she worked real hard to take care of her family. You saw that. Do you think that your connection to other parts of the world maybe was a driving factor for you as well? I mean, you weren't in one spot your whole life and kind of stuck in a small bubble, if you know what I mean. I mean, you saw a lot of wins and losses along the way, including your mom. Do you think that impacted you, as you were trying to figure out what it was you wanted to do?
Definitely, man. I think everything kind of impacts us, especially as children. Living in Europe for almost 6 years and experiencing that culture, that type of mindset, especially when it comes to the Albanian, the Turkish, and the Macedonian communities that I was a part of. I'm a mutt, by the way. I'm born in the States, but I lived in Europe, and my father's Albanian, my mother's Turkish. They're both born in Macedonia, which I grew up in as well too. And experiencing all 3 cultures in one region like that really molded me as a person, as a young adult, to think differently, to have a different perspective and a viewpoint based on different life experiences, which was great for me because here, a typical 14-year-old or a 12-year-old would be playing Nintendo. In Europe, there's no Nintendo. There's no video games or arcades. It's just outdoors, fishing, hanging out with your friends, playing sports. So it was a great experience being able to have that with coming back to the States, and then of course experiencing US as a teenager. So it definitely helped me. The moving around, I think, made me stronger because, of course, at first it was difficult as a kid, being a new kid in school every single time, trying to make new friends. That part was kind of a struggle in the beginning stages, but then you just start getting used to it, and then you realize you need to make an effort. If you're going to be in a brand new school, and step into it in a positive way and try to make as many friends as possible. And with that mindset, that attitude, it really helped me transition during those moves. So I think we moved like almost 17 times before I was 16 years old, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy. I mean, I guess we learned how to adapt to anything. You had to learn how to adapt to change, which probably puts you in an interesting position when it comes to this industry, which right when you think it's static, it's not. Something changes, it becomes very dynamic. You have to be able to bob and weave, so to speak. I would expect that maybe that helped your mindset a little bit in support of what you've got to do to be successful in an industry that's so dynamic.
I got to be honest, I think it's our greatest strengths to be able to adapt. So I think all industries are changing now, and they're adapting so much faster because of technology, because of consumer behavior, and because of all the different options that are available out there for consumers to be able to capitalize on. And with that type of competition, of course, everyone's trying to outpace each other and outdo each other, and who has the nicest, fastest, coolest toy to market themselves to really show a benefit to the client is typically the one that's going to really win that online war. Or internally, how do you really adapt your organization based on the workflows to simplify things, to make things better for your staff, your team members, you yourself? How much time are you putting into the old school paper-based process when you could eliminate a lot of it with using technology? So I feel like all industries are going to continue to change. And it's funny because if you look back 20 years ago, companies used to focus on high IQ. We have to hire people that are really, really smart and that did great in school. Then 10 years ago was EQ. We have to hire people that are not only smart, but now have the emotional intelligence to be able to handle the amount of stress and pressure that's on their plate on a day-to-day basis, and also represent the brand the correct way. But now I'm looking at both of them. They're great skill sets to have, but without the ability to be able to adapt in this world, especially even this past 12 months that we've experienced this entire COVID pandemic situation that we've all had to adapt to, the people that adapt the fastest are the ones that typically grow the quickest. And then there's always different stages of change. And I think it's Storm Norman performing and something else. But a lot of us get stuck in the beginning stage of, oh my God, change has hit me. I'm experiencing it, but I can't move yet. So I'm still digesting it, or I'm dwelling in it because I don't like it and I'm complaining about it, instead of just realizing what it is and just moving on. Like, just figure out the solution, change as quickly as you have to, and then keep moving in the right direction instead of just being stuck.
Yeah, you were talking about IQ and EQ, and again, this is a conversation you and I have had before, at least briefly. And I gave a talk to a group of youth a while back, and it was that relationship between IQ and grit. It was Angela Duckworth's, I think, book that I think she was the one that wrote Grit, if I remember correctly. And then a Brookings Institute study that actually compared, quote, success, and I don't remember how they defined success, but I think, part of it was economic, part of it was the family core and staying together. There were a number of things that ultimately defined success. It wasn't who has a jet and who doesn't have a jet. It was a more realistic definition. But those that hit the target were a healthy combination of the two. And then there were some really interesting data points that showed that IQ on its own actually it held you back at some level, unless you threaded the needle and found that perfect sweet spot for what it is you would do with your life, but it didn't define success because there were usually other things that weren't so positive. Maybe it was personal, maybe it was emotional or otherwise. I think for the youth that I was giving this talk to, it was refreshing for them to know that I can control that. I can control effort. I can't control IQ. I was born with this. I mean, at some level, we can strengthen it or weaken it. But it's an interesting comment, that you make, because I didn't use adaptation in that talk. And then listening to you say that, that's really what we're talking about, is the ability to adapt, and you get that by being comfortable and used to doing hard work.
Right. Right. And it's not something that you're born with. Like, it's something that you do acquire after years and years and years of practicing. So, and plus also taking the time to really understand yourself on why you react a certain way, what your mental paradigms really are based on specific trigger points that could possibly be holding you back. So anytime I feel that type of tension or that type of just uncomfort, I always ask why. Like, why am I feeling this? To try to dig a little bit deeper to figure out it's not the reason itself, it's not the action that's occurring that's really preventing me from doing this. It's my response to that action. So when you dig a little bit deeper and you can figure out the core and the reasoning behind it, a lot of times you realize, like, holy shit, this is something I've been doing for years, or something I need to work on, or something I just need to let go.
That's a quality of leadership, and leadership is not just how many people are under you in an org chart. That's not, to me, that's something totally different. That happens for all the wrong reasons sometimes. But when you started Geterate, as an example, or you became a leader of other people, was that something you had to learn, to take a breath when you got upset about something and say, what is it that I'm actually upset about? And then put yourself in a position to create a solution versus the outcome of your venting, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's something that everybody needs to learn. It's taking on the responsibility to be a leader and to guide your people in the right direction. It's a big responsibility. It's not a joke. And a lot of times players automatically feel that they could coach because they played the game, and it's a completely different game. And that's what I realized, and it slapped me in the face. I wasn't ready for it. Of course, a lot of us are confident in our ability to be able to do certain things, which is great. And having those life experiences and those wins gives you that confidence and that ego that you do need to push forward a lot of times. But I felt like that level of confidence in my earlier, I think I was 26, 27 when I took on the responsibility of really becoming a manager. I wasn't ready for it. I automatically went in with my ego thinking I knew everything. I knew how to play the game. So I'm going to teach them how I played the game. And showing them exactly how I did it was great based on the overall execution of the task itself, based on work, but it was never enough, especially when it came to the position responsibility. I had to make sure that they're in the best position to succeed emotionally, spiritually, and especially even financially. Closing the deal and getting things done on the task side is just a small piece of it. And what I realized is I was training monsters, like guys that were amazing at closing loans, but I didn't keep them, they went to another company to work for somebody else, or they burnt themselves out and they no longer were passionate about the industry. The culture wasn't set up correctly. And it wasn't about a team interdependent type of atmosphere. It was more of the old school Wall Street mentality of, let me just get the best killers out there and put them in a room and just put them on a phone and just let them go at it, which is, I'm not knocking it, but I'm also not supporting it. It's not something that I personally believe in. And my partner and I, even in 2014, like, we decided to completely eliminate that type of person in our organization. We lost almost 80% of our staff because we realized that we were doing something wrong. We created a bad working environment for bad people to want to be a part of. So we had a small percentage, of course, that believed in us, and maybe most of them believed in us because they were close to us, that they knew that we were good people and they were our friends, but they didn't believe in us because we were great leaders or we had a great company. So I realized at that point that we needed to work on ourselves and work on becoming a coach and a leader. So I consumed every single book I could possibly grab my hand on. So one of my favorites was Leaders Eat Last from Simon Sinek. The guy's brilliant, man. He's such a good author too. But he talks about Nelson Mandela's father and how Nelson Mandela became such an amazing leader himself. And Nelson, of course, contributes it all to his father. He said that his father was the chief of his tribe. And every single week, the entire tribe would get together to talk about issues, problems, goals, whatever they were focusing on. So it was a weekly team meeting. And so every single meeting, he would start by asking a specific question or talking about a specific subject and go and asking everyone in the room for their opinion. And I didn't understand what was so valuable about it when I was initially reading the chapter. I'm like, yeah, who gives a shit? He's going around the room asking people what they think. It's great. I kept reading on and kept reading on. And Nelson Mandela realized that, okay, he wanted to give everybody the opportunity to speak their mind first before he controlled the meeting by what most managers end up doing, which is a mistake on starting the conversation, talking about the topic and saying, guys, this is the problem. This is what I think we should do. And then going around the room and asking everybody for their opinion. And when that happens, and especially when you give your opinion as a leader, nobody's going to go against you. Nobody was going to want to make you look bad, especially if they have a better solution, or maybe maybe they think that their option might not be a good option. So I realized by controlling the way that I looked at things, Nelson Mandela said that his father 90% of the times came in thinking he knew what the solution was, and he was dead wrong, because the people that were a part of it on a day-to-day basis, especially that were responsible for it, saw something else that he missed because he wasn't a part of it, of course. So I think that really helped me, is understanding how to really manage people and understanding myself on how I need to really lead based on who I am. I can't be the same leader that other leaders are. I needed to kind of figure out my own path and my own way of doing things. And yeah, I've dedicated the past almost 8 years in just that part of it. And spent a lot of time on a weekly basis to make sure I continue to develop and continue to grow.
That's a fantastic story. And I love all of it. The identification of a weakness, the confidence to admit that it's a weakness, address it, go find a way to solution for it. So, and then also the fact that you specifically know when this happened, what it was you read, the story. Like you could rattle this off a million times, man. Like you just read that book yesterday, I'm sure. What are there now some specific things that you find you and your partners do on a daily or weekly or quarterly basis that has come from those mistakes that you made early on?
Yeah, of course. Being a better listener, of course, asking the right questions and being really good at asking questions that dig deep, setting up a really good atmosphere that people feel comfortable talking to you and being brutally honest. And I feel like that trust was never there in my late 20s, early 30s. People didn't feel comfortable enough to tell me the truth because they maybe didn't want to hurt my feelings or go against my particular opinion. So those mistakes that we used to make, we just focus on setting up a good culture and finding good people. Like that was the hardest part too, is what were we looking for and how to become a really good recruiter and understand what question to ask and what to look for in regards to a specific skill set in someone. I realized I stopped looking up to people based on their past accomplishments, and I really look at them based on who they are today and what they're trying to accomplish tomorrow. And that's what I'm looking for, especially when it comes to team members that are trying to be a part of this organization, because things, just like you said, are changing so quickly. Just because somebody accomplished something 5 years ago, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do the same thing today.
That's a hard thing to do also, especially in the industry that you're in, where your ROI is directly connected to data points and statistics that you can view right now. So it's very easy to get distracted for wrong reasons. Sometimes we call it volume blindness by the hiring manager, right? I see somebody that does 80 million in annual volume. That's 20 million more than my top originator in this branch. I don't care what their personality's like. I need that 80 million in volume. And maybe we're also not asking questions around how they've managed loan flow in the past, how they communicate with operations staff, the ones that keep the machine greased in such a way so that you've got the efficiencies that are necessary. Can they wrap their arms around the technology that we've utilized to help the whole company buy more time and better? Look, I could go on forever, right? Like we could cover all these topics. Have you found that you've had to coach yourself and maybe other managers away from that type of volume blindness? I mean, that's a really hard thing to do, right? You're saying, basically, I'm putting a Ferrari in your driveway right now, but I'm not going to let you drive it, because if I do, you're going to crash it into that building over there and you just don't even know it yet.
Right. We have, and that's one of the things that they constantly ask me about, based on someone that they're a little bit iffy on. They ask me to step in and interview them before they make the decision. But I do believe that we're a product of our environment too. There's a few things that I've realized, that hiring someone that just because they're part of a bad culture and a bad company that operates at a really fast pace, maybe just a fast talker and doesn't care about the culture, doesn't care about the connection that they have in the back end. That doesn't mean that they can't be successful in our model, as long as they understand the model and they understand what's expected of them before they step in. And as long as they're willing to adapt and grow and change to be successful with our model, it could work. It just, I always tell everybody, like, hey, every once in a while, there's always going to be that bad apple, but they're going to fizzle themselves out. They're going to realize that this isn't the right place for them. And then we're going to make a decision and let them go, especially if they're not respectful of the back-end operation, for example, their processing team, their underwriting team, their managers, their coworkers. If it's just about me, and not about the team, within time, we find that out and then let them go.
How do you, I'm changing gears a little bit here, but as I listen to you talk about identifying the problem and then being patient enough to come up with the solutions, I also think about a lot of conversations I have where I'm on a web call, a video call, and it's an important call, but I know that the leader that I'm talking to, who's investing in something that maybe we're doing with them, is completely distracted. They're looking at their cell phone every time it buzzes. I see them looking at a screen. There's an email that just came through. And I understand, I can relate. I think I struggle with that myself sometimes. But I also think those are the people that generally miss out on the things that you just described, because they can't slow down enough to identify those things and then come up with solutions. How do you manage yourself when it comes to that? Like, I know when you run a small business like you do, and one that's growing, I say small in quotes, you know what I mean?
No, I get it.
You're doing everything. I mean, there's nothing you don't touch. How do you force yourself to stop and truly pay attention to the thing that's in front of you? Do you have tricks? Are there things that you've learned over time?
I feel like meditation works for me. Training every single day, taking an hour and a half to just work out. But meditation, I feel like, is probably the most important part of my day, without being able to dedicate a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes a day, to controlling my mind and the state of mind that I'm in, to realize if it's a good one or a bad one, to be able to just reconnect with the current moment and be able to truly feel what's happening. Because I feel like when you lose that feeling, you lose that touch in what you were just saying, meaning that disconnect, that you're constantly moving and looking for the next thing. I think Tony Robbins talked about this. He said that most men hit midlife crisis in their 50s because we go crazy from our 20s. We start a family, we have kids, we focus on the wife, focus on the wedding, we focus on a career, and we're constantly moving. Like it's 12, 13, 14 hours a day. That's just nonstop. So when we put our head down, then we just turn on the TV and try to take our mind off of what we're dealing with, thinking that's an escape, but it's really not an escape. You're doing something else. Right. So he said that once we hit 50 and the kids are out of college and are no longer at home, and now you're coming closer to possibly retiring, and there's not a lot of things to do, we typically lose our minds. As when we try to buy the nice cars and the motorcycles, and we try to jump out of planes and do things to just make us feel alive, because we've been so busy for 30 years straight that we lost sight of the moment itself and the important things in life. So I feel like that 15 minutes every single day just allows me to reconnect with the moment, with the present moment, with myself, and kind of figure out what I'm going through. And from there, I take the next step. And it's what works for me. Doesn't mean it's the right solution for anybody else, but I love meditating, man. It really just sets the day. And then praying at the end of the night, being grateful. I feel like that also helps me just align with what's important. But that's it, those two things.
I think it's really important that people, I say this, I think normally when I have these types of conversations, I'm really talking about me. Let's just be real honest. I just think there's probably a lot of people like me that struggle with the same thing. They just don't say it. I was telling Nikki, my wife, I think this week, that I'm 49 years old. So we mentioned 50. I've been calling myself 50 lately because I think it's easier to just start doing it now than when the day comes.
Get out of the way.
Yeah, right. So, I've been saying I'm 50 for the last year. But I said to Nikki, I said, something I worry about a little bit is that I generally feel better, way better, when I'm busy doing something. And I know that's a good thing. I know that's a healthy thing. But I ought to feel pretty good when I'm not busy doing something, right? And I think that does play into the mindset of a leader who maybe makes mistakes and doesn't listen, doesn't pay attention. I would think that people that work with me think that I listen, but I'm not sure I'm always hearing, because I am distracted by all the noise that's happening in my head. And so I asked that question because I'm always looking for tricks. I mean, you and I have talked about working out. We've talked about meditation. I got a dry sauna not that long ago. And so I try to get in that thing for 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day and just kind of think. But, when I think of we're so fortunate that we get to work with so many different companies and leaders. But I think about the feedback that I get from employees about leaders, and the ones that I think stand out as the ones that get the most positive feedback, they're also the ones that seem to move slower. It doesn't mean they get less done. They actually get more done. Yeah. But when I talk to them and I see them work either at their corporate headquarters or on a group call, they just seem to move at a much slower pace. And I think either is that just something you're born with, or to you've had to learn it. And I think it's pretty amazing. It was why I'm curious about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I have the tendency to do that as well too. At times I get so busy that I have too much on my plate that I try to fly through it. And sometimes I'll make the mistake that I didn't catch something. I didn't see something based on someone's facial expression or the tone that they use when they were explaining something to me that I could have possibly caught if I was paying attention. But we're going to make those mistakes, man. Nobody's perfect. At the end of the day, I miss so many things. And then all of a sudden, I feel like the only way around it is to be brutally honest with the people that are in your community, are a part of your organization, and giving them the freedom to put you in check when you need to be put in check if you're not paying attention. So in my company, it's an open debate style atmosphere. Like there's people that will call my ideas stupid in front of everyone. And I love it. Like that's the type of relationship I want with our team. I want them to feel comfortable to talk to me like a normal person would talk to a normal person and debate me on it. Like I'm going to debate them. I'm going to tell them what I think, especially if I feel like my point is right. But I'm going to listen. I'm going to allow them to also speak their mind. But I feel like anytime I don't pay attention, I have really good people that either check me on it, or they'll be brutally honest and say, hey, that really bothered me. You didn't give me the time that I expected you to give me based on the concern that I had. And it's great when they bring that up to me. Of course, I feel horrible because I did it. But the only thing we can do is just make sure that the relationship is strong enough for them to feel comfortable to have that conversation with you and to bring it up instead of saying, no, Mike's not a good guy. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about my feelings. He only cares about money.
Right.
When they know that that's not the truth, or if you dedicated a time for them to really know what your goals are, your intentions are, especially for them, and the vision you have for the company, you'll be fine. Like, that's the only thing that kind of helps me, but you're never going to control that, man.
I mean, we're never going to get it perfect, but we sure can try. I heard a leader once say when someone comes into his office clearly frustrated, upset about something, kind of ready to fight, which happens in our industry relatively often. His first comment is generally going to be, I need to know, are you here to vent or are you here looking for a solution to something? Because if you're here to vent, I'm here to let you vent. You go off for 5 minutes and then go back. But if I don't know the difference, I don't know how to help you. And I thought that was a really good question. It's a really good way to approach that opening conversation that can start off, you know, on a negative level. I wanted to transition for a second and then and talk a little bit about something I was poking around on not that long ago and came across a video of yours from March of 2019. And you and I think your two partners or executives at the company were having a conversation. So remember, March of 2019, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, March of 2019.
Yep.
And your conversation was about margin compression and the industry slowing down and just thinking about what the industry is doing relative to what you want to be doing. Right. And the conversation was about efficiencies, and those efficiencies lead to a better cost to originate model and lots of other things. But then I started thinking, wow, what incredible timing of you guys sitting down and having that conversation, not knowing what was getting ready to happen across the world and in the industry. When you look back and think about conversations like that, and then sort of what happened after, where did your head go? I mean, like others, you were probably hanging on for dear life a little bit, maybe from an operational perspective when rates started going in. And it's almost like your brain had to switch on a dime from compression and volume dropping to something entirely different.
You know, nobody expected last year to happen the way that it did. And when we were talking about margin compression from 2019, we're talking about really what mortgage companies are struggling with because of the overall cost to originate a loan, and especially the changes that are happening with where the loans are coming from. So now that a lot of companies, most mortgage companies have built their operation based on, hey, let's be great at processing, underwriting, funding, closing loans, and let's pay top dollar to loan originators to be a part of our organization. Let's get the best recruiters, let's get the best LOs, and let them go out there and find us business. And that's how most companies have been built. And it's been working great for them. And the margins have been healthy enough for the past few decades that they were able to compensate their loan officers at a decent percentage and decent basis point, to the point that they were capable of going out there and originating the business. But now things are changing. Technology is changing. Consumer behavior is changing. There's new types of mortgage companies out there that are adapting to the online consumer direct model. So we realize that things are going to change, that with technology simplifying the overall application and pre-approval process, clients are going to shift from coming from real estate agents to working first the mortgage pre-approval process and then possibly going to the agents. And I realized this 5 years ago that the pass off with the high margin and the new type of lenders that are operating at a fraction of the cost compared to the most lenders out there, these online lenders, they're not paying 100 basis points. They're not paying 150 basis points. They're paying their team members either a salary with a small little bonus per file, or $500 a file, which is really nothing, but it's something when you're closing 10 to 15, 20 transactions on a month-to-month basis that adds up. And so I realized that companies are going to struggle because consumers are going to start shopping more and more and more. And with that high margin, that high interest rate, if their margins are way off, they're going to lose a lot of the business. So what I've seen the last couple of years is co-marketing agreements start disappearing. So loan officers are now not investing what they used to invest into real estate agents to go out there and work with Zillow, Trulia, whatever online lead aggregators that are available. So with that happening, now lenders realize, like, oh no, our mortgage guys aren't closing as many deals because we're not as aggressive as we need to be. And we're also not as aggressive as we need to be to tap into the online marketing and promoting our interest rates and our programs online for the consumer direct channel. So margin compression really started hurting lenders across the board. And on top of that, the amount of competition compared to the volume that was happening, it really, in 2018, put a lot of lenders in a bad position. A lot of lenders shut down their operations altogether because they just thought it wasn't worth it anymore. Now, last year was one of those years that was a blessing for our industry, even though it was an absolute disaster on what the entire globe and every country really had to go through and experience. But the industry itself made a huge profit, and loan officers made a lot of money, but that's just last year. That's not going to continue. And rates, when they're going to start going up, because they will go up, margin compression is going to hit lenders worse than it ever has. And when that happens, especially with their cost and operational workflow, they're going to be in trouble, especially moving forward the next couple of years, and not being able to adapt quick enough because they're so dependent on that loan officer that's dependent on the agent. So another thing is Zillow's opened up a mortgage company, opened up a real estate company. Lenders are now going to start opening up real estate companies themselves. So the competition is going to be fierce out there. It's going to be extremely difficult for your typical old school model to survive.
And with your model, I mean, you still have a strong belief that in the hybrid type model that there is going to continue to be incredible value in the relationship and the human element component of it versus AI only or machine learning only, or even a human being with a headset on in a cube, that you're really not building a relationship. It's a commoditized event. I think that's something that I've appreciated about the way you and your team looks at things, that in the midst of all of those efficiencies, technology, consumer direct, which doesn't mean the same thing that it meant 10 years ago, because if you said consumer direct then, I'm picturing a young person with a headset on getting paid 35 grand salary and 10 basis points on every deal, or 2,500 bucks or something. Right. But you still believe strongly in that human touch as a part of that process.
Absolutely. Think about this for a second. 20 years ago, not even, let's say 10 years ago, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, all the commercials online said what? Call us anytime. Our artificial intelligence bot is going to pick up and be able to answer any questions. Look at their commercials today. Call us anytime, a human will pick up. A real person is going to pick up to answer your question. So no matter what technology is available, people need to talk to people, especially when it comes to a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 transaction. We're not talking about a credit card for $500. Even with a credit card, you still want to talk to someone. So I don't think the human element will be completely eliminated. So I went to this conference. It was the Digital Mortgage Conference, and I think it was in 2018. There's this guy called the Bald Futurist. He was hired by the mortgage industry to do some research in regards to where he thinks the industry is going. And this guy is brilliant, by the way. There's companies all over the world that hire him based on products or services just to do a prediction on, hey, within 3 to 5, 10 years, is this still going to be something we could sell as a company or as a service? And he looked at the mortgage industry and he looked at the mortgage loan originator. And based on a 6-month review, he came up with a report and he looked at everyone in the room and said, 90% of you are not going to be here, plain and simple. But the 10% that are here are going to do 100% of the business. And adapting and using artificial intelligence and digital solutions to be able to eliminate the day-to-day minutia that goes into a file. Like I don't have my loan officers taking an application. Like I don't have them asking for social security numbers or date of birth or asking them for their current property address. They don't do any of that stuff. I allowed a system to do that stuff. I allowed a system to verify assets, to verify income, to verify the credit, to show exactly what loan programs are available. And allowing the system to do a lot of the work allows the loan officer to do the most important part of the work, which is guiding the client and answering specific questions and advising them on what they should do versus can do or possibly can't do. And that's the difference with how we're approaching this. Is we're trying to use technology simplify the process internally and externally, but most importantly, drop down the cost to be as competitive as possible when it comes to the rates that we're offering. So it's been working, and the hybrid model is, I do believe, the future of this industry, because with technology, there's a compliance aspect of it that really protects the consumer, which I absolutely love, that the human element is not dependent on what is being displayed or pitched to the client. The system does it. The system will show them, hey, here's the 30 different options that you qualify for. Here's the one that's going to save you the most amount of money within a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year term. And if you want to change things around, the program benefits will change as well too, which is kind of amazing. But it prevents from steering. It prevents from saying, hey, you should take an FHA program because I make 200 basis points as a loan officer for this company, and if you close this loan, I can give you a lower interest rate compared to a conventional loan because the margins would be much higher. So there's still shady companies and shady loan officers that do that. Not to say that there's a lot of them, but there's a reason why there's a separation between both industries. I believe that there's going to be a consolidation, and that consolidation is starting now. So lenders could start offering real estate services and start having their agents internally be able to have that hybrid model that an agent could be a one-stop shop. Now, of course, FHA is one of the things that they can't offer, but the company could offer it, and they could keep the agent out of it and allow the technology to be able to book it. So there's a future for a new type of industry professional that I do believe is going to be both a real estate agent and a loan officer.
It's fun listening to you talk about it. You got the matrix brain going when you go off on those tangents, and you've learned from experience. This is not new. You guys started this company, I think, in 2014, right? So it's not as if you just came up with this yesterday. You've managed through some significant business cycles along the way, and you know, I'm excited to watch you and the group continue to grow, and I have one more question before we break, and I'll tell you, thanks for coming on the Walk podcast. We've been talking about this for a while, and I knew it would be fun. 45 minutes in the blink of an eye. You and I could go for 2 more hours probably. So here's my question. It's the most important question. It's going to define whether or not this conversation was a success or a failure. I'm looking at Thomas, my buddy over here, who's keeping me straight.
I'm wondering what this question
You ready?
is.
You ready for this question?
I'm ready. I think Michael needs to be ready, though, not me.
Michael's good. He's going to get it right no matter what, but it's going to make it or break it for us.
Okay.
So the round ball that you kicked around in Europe when you were coming up and you were so good, what do we call that sport?
Well, you're supposed to call it football, but it's soccer.
Winner, chicken dinner. It's a success. The episode is a success. I can't wait until our English recruiter, Tom Dealey, hears this episode. He's going to be very unhappy with Michael when he hears what he just said.
Unhappy or happy? Where's he from?
Unhappy. He's from Oxford, England, my friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was probably your level. He came over here, was an All-American in the States here, but he is 100% full. Put it this way, right now with the Euro Championships going on, he's taking PTO the last 2 hours of every day until this thing's over.
It's so funny, man. Yeah, I'm taking my 2-week vacation just to watch a tournament.
Exactly. I got to hire somebody new just to cover the gap that's been created by him watching soccer for however many weeks it's going to take. So, hey, man, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you, bud.
No, of course. It was a pleasure being here, bud. And you need anything else, just let me know.
That's a deal. We'll talk soon.
I'll talk to you, man. Take care.
I'm in.
Bye.